Most musicians know why they practice, and also most of them know what to practice. But do you actually know how to practice? I thought I knew how to practice, but you know what? I have one big problem. I procrastinate a lot. So because of that, I researched a lot. What's the best way to practicing and how can you overcome procrastination? How to get started every day and how to get more of the time that you spend. We've got a lot of questions from you guys on Instagram and here on Facebook on how to practice and how to increase the quality of that practicing. So I have 5 very practical tips how to practice better, not just more. So make sure you check out all these tips and leave a reply on if you would be using them or maybe if you have a few more so we all could benefit from it. Leave it in the comments down. So let's get straight into the first one and the one that is a big one for me, procrastination. Do you recognize this? Let's say in the beginning of the day you decided you really want to practice and you will do it somewhere, but as the day goes by you have so many other things to do, so in the end it gets moved to the next day. Or maybe you know what you should all improve on your instrument, but you just don't know where to start, so you think I'll think this a bit better through, so when I get started I'll have a better plan. So that's why you should apply the 5-minute rule. I just made that up as a rule. If self-help gurus can do it, then I can do it too. What's the 5-minute rule? Well, it's very simple. You plan for 5 minutes of practicing every day. And before you ask me, but that's not a lot of practicing, how do I get better with 35 minutes in the week? Biggest problem here with procrastination is getting started. If you just commit to 5 minutes, it's a very small step. And if you started with the 5 minutes, well, chances are very big you go way longer than 5 minutes. If you told yourself I have to practice at least an hour, well, then by the time that you come to a point where you maybe could practicing, you think like, oh, I do have 20 minutes, but I don't have an hour, so let's not do it. And there's also a second part to this. You might want to find a commitment buddy. Just find somebody who's also practicing kind of in the same thing as you, and then you agree both on to check if you did do those 5 minutes a day. I've done that a few times already with a student of mine, Sai Schmidt, who's an amazing guy and an amazing student. And we logged on Skype when we practiced for 5 minutes or more, of course, that day. Research showed multiple times that accountability helps. Our brain's reward system is highly responsive to our social behavior. And we often put too much expectation on ourselves by directly thinking when we practice, we should practice for hours. Because everybody knows those stories about amazing musicians like Charlie Parker. He would be practicing for 12 hours. We should do at least half of that. So we procrastinate and then we don't practice at all. So guys, try this 5-minute a day system and preferably with somebody that you can log to when you did do that. And even if you would keep it to just 5 minutes that day, 5 minutes of quality practicing 7 times a week, so 35 minutes, is way better than maybe just one time, 1 hour a week. Which brings me to the next step. You might want to have consistency over quantity. There's multiple research to suggest that what I just said, 5 minutes of practicing 7 days a week, which adds up to 35 minutes, is way more effective than 1 hour in one single week. So why is that? Well, it's almost half the time spent in total, but 2 core principles turn the effectivity around. Unless you're a trained monk in mindfulness, you probably can't concentrate for an hour straight. You will be way more focused for those 5 minutes than when you would do an hour. Secondly, repetition works. So watch this video again if you want it to stick. For the science-based research on this topic, and there is plenty, you can for starters check interleave practicing or spaced repetition on the internet. Okay, the third one is a very short one, but you really need to hear this. You probably know this, but when you're sounding good while practicing, you're not practicing. So try to sound crap like hell.
I like this instrument. I want to get better. It's like golf. See, I like golf too.
No, that's not the message behind this, of course. But a lot of people, me included, practice just over standards and noodle a bit around all the stuff they already know. Cool and fun, but you're not really practicing. It's not that it doesn't have value, but the most value comes from practicing stuff you can't do. And that makes that you probably sound crappy while doing it. So when your neighbors start complaining, you know that you're on the right path. The fourth one is know your goals. What do you want to be able to improve on your instrument? Be specific. Do you want to get, for example, better at improvisation? Well, that's not specific enough. Then you'll start noodling around without a purpose. Rather, do you think you need to improvise better in a bluesy way? Or get more rhythm into your lines? Or play melodic phrases like Michael Brecker does? That's already way better, but also next up, if that last question was your goal, then also start researching what a Brecker line is. Or at least according to you. Pick a line what you think is a typical Brecker line, transcribe it or take it from one of our transcriptions, analyze it, discover the concept and start practicing that concept. This is a very important question as well. Do you know what you like and why you like it? Certainly that why you like it. Otherwise, you'd probably just be copying other people's lines, and that's fine too. That's another way of practicing, but maybe a little bit less creative. And then the last one, the fifth one, and that's probably the hardest one, certainly for jazz players. Give yourself proper feedback. One thing that people ask me quite a lot of times is that they don't really know if they made any progress in regards to improvisation. And this is, of course, a very hard thing because what is getting better at improvisation? Playing more notes or playing better notes or making better melodies, but what are good melodies? This can differ a lot depending on who you ask or depending on which yardsticks you use. While there are a lot of subjective yardsticks, don't forget there are plenty of objective ones too, like for example playing in time or playing technically sufficient on your instrument. I mean, like, don't crack every other note. If you start cracking every third note, that's pretty good for jazz.
Jazz. Nice.
Problem here, of course, is that we can't give good and certainly not objective critique to our own playing while playing. So that's the last tip. You might want to record yourself. You hear way more if you record yourself, and certainly when there's an interval between when you recorded it and when you will be critiquing that recording. So what I propose is that you create a folder on your computer today and record yourself and play on any tune, any concept whatsoever. The only thing is that you really need to remember what you played. Then listen back in at least a week so you aren't biased towards your own playing, because if you do it right after, then you kind of know what you thought there and blah de blah. Don't do that. Listen back in a week and then critique your own playing. Then you know what you need to work on. And then record yourself at least once a month, put the date on that, preferably around the same date, and do that for every month. After half a year and certainly a year, you should be able to hear a difference, for the better, hopefully of course, between the first recording and one of the later videos. It's a bit like losing weight. It doesn't come overnight and also not in 1 week. But if you keep this logbook and keep repeating a consistent, focused approach, I promise you, in a year you will be baffled with how you sounded like a year ago. Of course, this is all coming from the Yoda of procrastination, but that's exactly why I did a ton of research on how to overcome this for myself. That's the only thing I'm sharing it here with you guys. And if you have other ideas and other tips and maybe also other research on the topic, I would love to hear that from you guys. Leave a comment in the section below. And also if this makes sense for you and if you will be testing all these tips. It might be a lot, those 5, but just implementing one, starting this week, that would be already a huge thing to do. Remember, Don't expect too much from yourself. One of those 5 tips is plenty. That was it for this video, guys. If you made it to here, may I ask you leave a like and maybe subscribe if you haven't, and put on the bell notification and all that good stuff to get notified when we release a transcription video or a tutorial like this one. I'm Jori Reiners from Sharp 11 Music, and I hope to see you next time.